interesting story about what's going on there. It's really crazy, and we have got governments run amok who are standing for criminals and against the citizens. This is literally what's happening with the Portland Police Department. It's the most insane thing I've ever seen. It's a real head turner, because in the 1960s, when you had similar types of violence, it was just always groups of violent citizens going against the police. Now we not only have violent citizens in the Antifa crowd, we've got the police department coordinating with the violent citizens. It's the most crazy thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, we have police out in the streets telling the Antifa people how to act and how to stay away from being arrested. But I guess Christy Noem is on the ground now. I just had this clip come up of her going up to a legal and telling the person what she thought.
Hello, I'm Christy. I wanted to ask you a few questions. How long have you been in the United States? You don't know? No English?
¿Cuántos años tienes en los Estados Unidos?
Alrededor de
7 años.
How many times have you come in and gone out of the country illegally?
¿Cuántas veces has entrado a los Estados Unidos y te regresas desde México? 5 times.
5 times?
7 years.
You've been here 7 years? When's the last time you went back to Mexico? And is he convicted sex offender here?
Sí.
No?
¿Tienes cargos?
You're in Portland?
¿De qué? Provecho.
What was your crime in this country?
¿Qué fue? A minor.
A minor? Okay. You also know it's a crime to be here illegally, and you will be prosecuted for it, correct?
¿Tienes entendido que van a tener cargos de arresto?
Sí.
Do you have family here?
No.
Do you have children? No? So how old are you? 27?
37 o 47?
37.
Oh, 37. Okay. And you're not married and you have no children? Okay. All right. Well, you will be brought to justice and prosecuted for your crimes.
Ya va a haber cargos tocantes lo que explicamos ya.
All right, there you go. But 37, no family, and walked across the border. I mean, who knows what groups he's involved in.
Yeah, this is rampant. You know, it's so funny. The American people are still standing with Donald Trump on all this. They know how bad this situation got. And yes, it's very messy, and there are going to be up and down times that seem politically untenable. Thank goodness Donald Trump just sticks in there and keeps going with it. We need to clean up this problem. There are a lot of criminals who are here illegally, which means they're here criminally, and they keep running rampant. And we have got major cities all over the country standing up with these people. Some of them are starting to change. Like the situation in Dallas actually apparently is pretty good between federal ICE agents and other federal authorities and the Dallas Police Department. So that's actually interesting and good news. And hopefully there's some other cities that will come in line. But we still have major cities. And by the way, the worst of them is Chicago. You've got J.B. Pritzker and Brandon Johnson talking crazy stuff. Brandon Johnson saying that Donald Trump wants to fight the Civil War again. He just recently said that. It's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. It's absolutely and literally insane. These Democrats in these elected positions in states and cities are literally insane, not just politically insane. They're saying insane things. This is a real crisis point in American history. And I believe, but I also hope that we overcome this. And I mean, we got the right guy in the White House to help do it. And he's got the right people working in his administration to help make it happen.
Yep. Well, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of arrest to clean it all up. But in other news, Mark Carney was in the Oval Office this morning with President Trump, the Prime Minister of Canada. Is it Prime Minister or?
Yeah, Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, yeah. That's right. Here's a clip of Trump mocking transgenderism. And I guess Mark Carney's daughter is transgender. And he didn't look very comfortable. Here you go.
We also have great policy. We have strong borders. We have no men and women's sports. We have, basic things. We're not We're not going to take your child away and change the sex of your child. We're not going to do things like that. What they're doing to the country is so incredible. And they got away with it with all their woke crap, and now it's stopped. And we have a country that's based on common sense and strength and intelligence. I mean, we have the United States of America, and I say it all the time. Other leaders have told me this. Mark hasn't yet, but I think he would. A year ago, we were a dead country, and now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world. Maybe Canada. I'll give Canada, but because I do like. We also have great policy.
All right, there you go. But there's more clips coming in there. I don't know if Mark Carney's daughter is really transgender. That's what this tweet says, but I don't know.
I'm not aware of it, but I'll tell you, it was another tour de force in the Oval Office. Donald Trump was just brilliant today, answering a lot of questions. And by the way, he was answering questions about cutting government agencies, cutting government funding. He said, yep, we're looking at it very seriously. We're going to do some stuff. There's a talk of a memo having gone around saying that furloughed federal employees will not receive back pay. There's some question about whether the law requires them to receive back pay. And there is a legal argument apparently being developed to consider whether they don't need to do that. And that's going to be an interesting part of this entire process. The Democrats, though, have entrenched themselves into that. Sorry to go too far away from Mark Carney, but Canada's not too interesting right now. But Donald Trump is being aggressive, and Democrats are making a huge mistake. I do think he's winning this debate, but there's a lot to play out with the American people because this is uncomfortable stuff. And this is why no previous president, particularly any previous Republican president, has been willing to take on these battles because of their fear of what the American people will do to respond to the situation that feels uncomfortable. We are going to find out with Donald Trump in office if it works to stand up to this stuff and trust the American people. They don't want the government that they have because they don't. And in fact, we'll talk about that a little later with something I sent to you.
Yep. Well, Mark Carney, I mean, this meeting, most of the clips I'm seeing coming out of here have nothing to do with Canada. It seems like people aren't really interested in pushing out those clips. But he did get a question because he said Mark Carney was a great man. And a reporter asked him, if he's such a great man, why aren't you wanting to make a deal with him?
Yeah, this is a good clip.
Here's Trump.
So then what's holding things up? If he's a great man and you want to do a deal with Canada, why aren't you?
Because I want to be a great man, too. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. That could have been. I think you got that one. That could have been. Thank you very much.
I don't know what that means.
What a fun president.
There you go.
Yeah. What a fun president. I love those one-offs that he puts out there. And, they're not perfectly trimmed and put in a bow package and right political speech approach that one should take. And frankly, it throws people off guard, and that's a good thing. It's really refreshing, Donald Trump being in the White House.
Yeah, well, here's another one. He's going back to his old jokes about merging the United States and Canada. Here you go.
And now, and I'm running out of time, but this is many respects the most important.
The merger of Canada and the United States.
I'm only kidding. That wasn't where I was going. And
I love it.
Yep.
It's really fun to watch this president entirely eviscerate the typical way of doing things in Washington, D.C. We have needed this for years. Yes, it is messy. But as I said, I was an original Ted Cruz supporter in 2016. I quickly came on board with Trump when he won the nomination. And I was telling people who were complaining about him and the way he does things, from my experience then of many years at that time, having been on Capitol Hill, I said that he was going to turn over all the trash cans in Washington, D.C. that have been piling up for years and expose what's really going on. He's doing it, and he's doing it brilliantly, and I want him to continue.
Well, here's one more clip that came out of that meeting. A reporter asked him about the Insurrection Act, and he's talked about this, I think, in a few times in the past couple of days. about invoking the Insurrection Act, and that he'll do it if he has to, which he should. Here you go.
Mr. President, can we talk about Portland for a second? Are you planning to invoke the Insurrection Act? That would be, a very long-standing law that's been on the books.
Yeah, well, it's been invoked before, as you know. If you look at Chicago, Chicago's a great city where there's a lot of crime. And if the governor can't do the job, we'll do the job. It's all very simple. They probably had 50 murders in Chicago over the last 5, 6, 7 months. Many people were shot. And then the governor gets up and he says, well, we can handle it. They can't handle it. They don't know what they're doing. The mayor is grossly incompetent. He's at a 4% approval rating in Chicago. He's at a 4%, lowest approval rating, lower than even de Blasio had, which is hard to believe in New York. I thought de Blasio would always maintain that record, but the Chicago guy is even lower. So I think that we want safe cities. If you look at D.C., you would right now, Mark, you could go out, take your family out to dinner, you could walk right down the middle of the street. There is no crime in D.C. When I got here, this place was a raging hellhole where people would come from Canada, people would come from other places and end up getting shot. Nobody's being shot. The National Guard's been unbelievable. I mean, they are strong, tough guys. You know.
Well, there you go. And a lot of people are hesitant about the Insurrection Act, using it and saying, well, what if the other side gets in and use it as a precedent? Well, what's it there for then? You know, if our streets are being taken over by gangs and militias, then what's it for?
Well, I'm going to be very clear. To do it just because there's crime on the streets is really not the Insurrection Act. I'll tell you what the model is. The model is what's going on in Portland. The Insurrection Act actually is very, very plausible for what's happening in Portland. The way that they're treating that ICE facility, the things that Antifa are doing in that city and around that facility clearly are an insurrection in my mind. I think that that's the closest example of what we have that might fit the Insurrection Act. And I think the model here, and I would encourage this model to be repeated wherever it needs to, including Chicago, is you go and you protect the federal facilities. You have the Antifa, paid Antifa protesters come and do what they do, and then there would be an argument for the Insurrection Act. Donald Trump is entirely within his authority. Like it's unquestionable, his authority to bring in federal agents and federal troops to protect federal facilities. Federal facilities are considered federal U.S. property. He's entirely within his right to do that. And as these local elected officials and local police departments allow the violence to come, then there would be a reason to pull in the Insurrection Act. In Portland, I think it could and should be done. The elected officials and the police department are doing a horrible job there. I will say that might not play out precisely the same way in Chicago, where the police chief there actually tried to correct this this horrible situation where one of his lieutenants had called off police helping the folks from ICE there. And that actually could be an insurrection as well, what happened. But this police chief has tried to correct it. I mean, I think it lacks some rigor to it, but it was definitely a departure from what had happened. And the story is there's a rogue police officer commander that did that. There's another thing happening in Chicago right now. And this is evidence in my mind that Democrats may be causing themselves a severe political mistake in the state of Illinois. I was speaking with a friend of mine in Chicago, and I did a little political work in Chicago in 2022, so I was up there quite a bit. I mean, I'm from the area as well. The folks in the African-American communities there are not responding to Democrat petitions that are coming to the doors. They're not responding to voter registration efforts by Democrats at the door. They're pushing them aside and telling them to leave. There is something stirring in Chicago that is quite different than anything that I've ever seen before. There's real angst in the African American community, even in the white and other ethnic communities. There's a lot of Slavic and Irish ethnic communities in that area. They're done with it. They're so frustrated with what's happening in Chicago and Cook County. So you might see something very interesting happen in a future election in that area.
Yep. We'll be right back after this break.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
Back from the break. Jim, I'm sorry. I guess we have some breaking news here. The U.S. Senate has confirmed 107 of President Trump's nominees all in one to be pushed along with a vote of 51 to 47. This despite a shutdown.
Yeah, it's interesting that Republicans have a bit of a spine with a Republican president that has a spine. And this needed to happen a long time ago. Republicans should have done this earlier in the year. They're finally sort of getting their act together just a little bit, and it's going to be really helpful for us to get this problem fixed. 107 judges is a lot. There's a real need to get these people confirmed because we have a real problem in nominees for the federal government as well as in the judicial system. So good news.
Yep. And it looks like you were saying the strategy should be to put the National Guard in these federal buildings, outside of these federal buildings, have the Antifa guys come, and then, that will give the justification to take these people down. It looks like there is spotted some National Guard showing up in Chicago now.
Well, that's been in the works. And by the way, I'm not saying to stir up the trouble so you can create an insurrection.
But they're already there.
If they end up coming and acting in an insurrectionist manner, then that would be a reason to call for the Insurrection Act. Otherwise, just keep the facilities safe. That's the biggest thing we need to do. We do need to deal with crime in this country. I'm not saying it's unimportant based upon what I'm about to say, but I do believe that getting criminal illegals out of this country is fundamentally necessary. Cities like Chicago have been a safe harbor for these criminal illegals, and ICE needs to be able to do its duty. So you do need the protection of these facilities. If Antifa comes in and causes major problems, then you might have an argument for the Insurrection Act. But if the federal government does anything to stir that up on purpose, which being at the facility and protecting it is not stirring it up or invoking it. If they come in and do it themselves outside, and as they're doing in Portland, then there might be an argument for it. I think there could be a legal case.
Yeah, I mean, if they just are there protecting, if they're going out and, pushing people around and walking the streets.
And if things are peaceful, that's fine.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. ICE needs to be able to do its job. In my opinion, between the two, that's the number one goal. Listen, if Democrat elected officials are going to continue to foster crime in their communities, they're going to pay the price for that politically. So let that play out all by itself. We need ICE to be able to be effective, and Donald Trump needs to protect those facilities where necessary so that they can be effective in what they're doing.
Yep. Well, in other news, it looks like Marsha Blackburn was just on Fox saying that she is working for the disarmament of Jack Smith. Here you go.
Point soon, but we do know it's illegal. We do know it's a violation of our rights. And of course, Jack Smith is going to have to answer for this. I'm already working on a letter to the D.C. bar, a complaint letter to file against him. He should be disbarred.
Well, let me ask you this, Senator. We're
point soon.
There you go. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. Yeah. There is another disbarment effort that hopefully will not be successful. But Jeff Clark, who works in the DOJ again now, he worked in the DOJ in the first Trump administration. He's dealing with a disbarment that was entirely political. When it comes to Jack Smith, this may be quite appropriate. And I think that that needs to be investigated. Of course, the D.C. bar is radical leftist. They're going to favor Democrats. They probably are not going to take any action on Jack Smith, but they are taking action against Jeff Clark. If they took no action on Smith and they continue their action on Clark, that just proves it's a bar association that is entirely political in its approach. And there are many organizations, including Mike Davis's Article 3 project, that are looking for ways to cause problems for that bar association, which is really radical and out of control.
Yep. And it looks like James Comey, according to the court order here, will be arraigned on Thursday at 10 a.m. So we've been kind of waiting on what's going to happen there. I don't think everyone's been waiting to see he's going to turn himself in, or are they going to go get him, or what's going to happen. But it looks like it's scheduled to occur on Thursday, October 9th at 10 a.m.
Hey, if they can bring Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon in chains, why don't they just do it to James Comey?
Yeah,
listen,
Roger Stone.
Yeah, Roger Stone. I listen, I don't know that turnabout's fair play, but that might be appropriate in this situation. I will say this. There are a lot of reports coming out of the Comey indictment that there is very serious extra action about to come against him. There's a lot of evidence that's piling up against him that is confirming the theory of a RICO situation from 2016 all the way to today, with James Comey and John Brennan, a lot of these people. If what I'm hearing, and I understand it, if that is correct and what is happening, this thing's going to explode. It's going to be a big deal, and you're going to see people go to jail. I really believe that.
Well, in other news, we have Tim Burchett has introduced, let me find it here. Tim Burchett has officially calls on Oversight Chairman Comer to subpoena Netflix executives for targeting children with transgender and LGBTQ content. This has kind of blown up recently with multiple shows, not just one, multiple children's shows pushing transgenderism, LGBTQ, saying, you can be whatever you want in these cartoons. So, I mean, I think they've already taken a pretty big hit for all this as well.
We have to have some standards when it comes to entertainment media, but those should be on the severe end. Issues like pornography and that sort of thing maybe come to mind. I am really, really hesitant to create a regulatory structure where you try to deal with this. You have had Netflix lose tons of subscribers. Their stock is down because of it. And it's enough just to shame them and let the free market deal with it and have people act appropriately. But what Netflix is doing is aggressive. It is outrageous. It is an attempt to create a cultural situation that is antithetical to truth. And you're seeing, though, in many other platforms and areas, this idea of pressing and promoting transgenderism go by the wayside. And that's a good thing. And it's been one of the positive aspects of Donald Trump coming into office for getting rid of federal funding. If there's any federal funding going to any institution, private, public, anywhere that supports this, as Donald Trump is pulling that out by executive order, it needs to continue. If you're talking about government money, then yeah, you have to go after it when it gets to any of these organizations directly or indirectly. But in terms of creating a new regulatory structure, I'm very hesitant about even starting that process because it's one of the biggest problems we have in this country. We're regulating everything through government means, and we got to stop it.
And they've already taken, I think they've gotten the message. Hopefully they'll listen, but I think they've gotten the message pretty hard. I think they've lost millions, if not billions of dollars from this.
They're losing, I don't know the actual number, but I think it's tens of millions of revenue. Listen, if they're going to continue to exist and do these things and people want to go to it, I don't want the federal government to tell them to stop, but we all need to tell them to stop. We need a reemergence of shame in this culture, particularly on this issue, not to the point of trying to destroy the lives of people who claim to be transgender, but we do need to make it wrong and even illegal for minors to be allowed to do these sex change surgeries and the medications that go along with it. That is entirely inappropriate. We need to make it illegal. Any law anywhere in the country that takes the right of parents away from helping to train and bring up their children, unless there's physical and sexual abuse, and it needs to have rigorous standards to be able to determine that. Parents should be directing the education and welfare of their children. That is the natural order of things. That's the way it ought to be. Every society should honor that. So if you're talking about that sort of thing, then I can see some government restrictions to it. But if you're going to try to tell entertainment platforms what they can and can't do, that's wrong. I think the culture is going to shame this out of Netflix ultimately, and we're seeing the beginnings of that right now.
Yep. Well, in other news, I guess Pam Bondi has said that most likely a special counselor will be put up to investigate all the ways that the Biden DOJ went after conservatives. Here you go.
To happen. Madam Attorney General, I think we need a special prosecutor to be appointed whose sole responsibility will be to get to the bottom of what has happened in every instance that I have just named. I think we need to know exactly who approved the wiretaps on United States senators. Who knew about it? What agents were involved at DOJ or the FBI? I think we need to know exactly who signed off on the Catholic memo, the spying memo. Who was involved with it? How far did it go? I think we need to know exactly who authorized the prosecution of Mark Houck, who terrorized pro-lifers and tried to intimidate them. I think we need to know that, Mr. Chairman, this committee needs to do oversight hearings. We need to have thorough hearings into what has happened these last 4 years and this abuse that has now just been uncovered, because we have to ensure that it stops. As you just said, Attorney General Bondi, we have to ensure that it stops. This chapter in American history needs to come to a close, never to be opened again. The use of the most powerful law enforcement bodies in the world against ordinary citizens and political opponents must end once and for all. And we have a chance to do it, and it needs to be done with a thorough investigation, full transparency. And those who violated laws need to be prosecuted. I thank you for what you're doing, Attorney General Bondi. I hope that you will launch a thorough investigation. I hope you'll appoint a special prosecutor. Mr. Chairman, I hope we'll hold hearings. And with that, I yield.
Yeah. Before I call on Blumenthal, I want to, without objection, introduce into the record a document that General Bondi helped to declassify.
Well, there you go. I think that's what most Americans, most Trump supporters have been wanting this past year of the Trump administration, for accountability.
The accountability should come. If they're going to do a special prosecutor, they better not violate the special prosecutor law the same way that the Biden administration did with Jack Smith. And here's the thing. I don't know that you need a special prosecutor. Just use the resources that you have and get straight down to it. Forget it if people say you're being political or whatever. We're well beyond that concern. We need, more importantly than a special prosecutor, we need a Justice Department that actually pursues justice. Pam Bondi just needs to assign someone to it, which I understand she has, or it seems to. She needs to assign someone to it. She needs to empower Kash Patel to do all the investigation that he needs to do. We need to avoid what has typically been the purpose of a special prosecutor, which is to say, oh my gosh, I don't want to see political, so I got to throw someone in there. Listen, it is inherently a political position. And the ultimate keeper of the law or person who's supposed to pursue the law is the President of the United States. with the help of an attorney general. Pam Bondi just needs to do it internally, and in the same process, reforming an institution that is incredibly corrupt and needs to be radically transformed. So just do it yourself, Pam. Put someone on it or some group of people on it and make it happen. I don't know that a special prosecutor is necessary, but I agree with everything that Josh Hawley said right there. Everything that he said needs to be exposed should be exposed. Senator Hawley is absolutely right about that.
Yep. And I guess I got one fix I got to say. James Comey was supposed to be arraigned on Thursday, but they have moved it to tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Oh.
Yeah. So because of scheduled protest and people that were going to be gathering around the courthouse on Thursday, they have now ordered that he be there tomorrow at the courthouse at 10 a.m. Take care.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed. We have a big announcement, folks, something we've been waiting on for several months, and it's now here. It's called Bella Melt. You were on it for just 1 week when you lost 3 pounds. So in the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. It's a sugar-free fast melt caramel. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you make, we talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel. We're noticing other people losing up to 7 pounds in the first week. 4 pounds has been about the average. As you lose weight and as you take these Bella Melts, it's going to help lower that blood sugar in your body as well.
All the information is there. MelissaHouseBG.com, MelissaHouseBG.com. Just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 fast action. Tonight on the Worldview Report, President Trump demands that a candidate for Virginia Attorney General resign. That's over a series of text messages in which the candidate said he wanted a state lawmaker murdered. New tariffs are announced on heavy trucks and other goods coming into the United States. We'll share the details. No-go zones for ICE agents are happening in major cities. And you bet, as the confrontation between the White House and blue states intensifies, it's going to grow worse. And President Trump now says he's decided to allow Ukraine to use American-made Tomahawk cruise missiles against Russia. But he's waiting to deliver the missile system until he's assured of what targets in Russia will be hit. We'll expose how this escalates the Russia-NATO war in Europe to dangerous levels. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening, and welcome to the Worldview Report. Leading off tonight, President Trump publicly demanded that Jay Jones, the Democratic nominee for Virginia Attorney General, withdraw from the race. That's after damning text messages resurfaced. The messages include vivid and violent language aimed at a sitting Republican leader, making this more than just a tone problem. For many voters, an Attorney General candidate fantasizing about murder, well, it crosses a line that the ballot box must address. The text, they were originally sent in August of 2022, and they were reported to reference then House Speaker Todd Gilbert in brutal terms. One message, it read exactly, quote, 3 people, 2 bullets, Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head, end quote. Those words would seem to cross the line of acceptability from anyone running for a statewide legal office who would supervise law enforcement and legal policy, right? In fact, reports said the messages also allegedly included statements wishing harm on Gilbert's children, which makes the conduct even more shocking. Whether meant as a joke or not, threats and fantasies about harming public officials and their families, they are not acceptable political rhetoric. This isn't creative hyperbole. It's a disqualifying pattern of thought for anyone asking to be the Commonwealth's top law enforcement officer, don't you think? President Trump, he captured the outrage in blunt terms when he wrote on his Truth Social account, quote, "It has just come out that the radical left lunatic Jay Jones, who is running against Jason Myers, the great attorney general in Virginia, made sick and demented jokes, if they were jokes at all, which were not funny, and that he wrote down and sent around to people concerning the murdering of a Republican legislator, his wife, and their children," end quote. Republican leaders across the state and nation, they joined President Trump in calling for accountability, insisting that Jones step aside. Vice President J.D. Vance, Governor Glenn Youngkin, and House Speaker Mike Johnson all publicly urged Jones to withdraw. That unified Republican pressure, well, it highlights how seriously conservatives view threats against public servants and their families. And yet, there are no such calls from the left. It's crickets. I'm not aware of a single high-profile Democrat who has called on Jones to drop out. In fact, I would suggest the demands from the right will just make Jones more popular within the base of these radical leftists. You see, that's how the left-wing paradigm works. The U.S. is imposing an additional import tariff on foreign-made heavy trucks entering the country. That's what President Trump said on Monday. The new tariffs, they will go into effect on November 1st. President Trump said in a post to his Truth Social account, quote, "Beginning November 1st, 2025, all medium and heavy-duty trucks coming into the United States from countries will be tariffed at the rate of 25%. Thank you for your attention to this matter," end quote. The announcement comes a day before Trump is set to host Prime Minister Mark Carney at the White House. That happened today. Last week, Trump had reiterated a past vow that he would put import tariffs of 100% on pharmaceutical drugs, 50% on kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities, 30% on unupholstered furniture, and 25% on heavy, trucks, starting all on October 1st. While Trump did not provide a legal justification for the tariffs, he said on Truth Social that the taxes are imported kitchen cabinets and sofas, and they were needed, quote, "for national security and other reasons," end quote. Under the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, the administration launched a Section 232 investigation in April about the impacts on national security from pharmaceutical, drug, and truck imports. The Commerce Department launched an investigation into timber and lumber back in March, though it's unclear whether the furniture tariffs stem from that. The Chicago mayor, Brandon Johnson, announced on Monday that he has signed an executive order creating, quote, ICE-free zones, end quote, within the city, banning ICE agents from city property. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson signed the executive order on Monday prohibiting federal immigration agents from using city-owned property for immigration enforcement operations. That's as the Trump administration deploys the National Guard there to Illinois. Johnson established the so-called ICE-free zones and then referred to U.S. Immigrant and Custom Enforcement as part of his Protecting Chicago initiative, rejecting President Trump's crime crackdown on deportations that's being rolled out in the city. Johnson said during the news conference on Monday, this, watch.
Today, we are signing an executive order aimed at reining in this out-of-control administration. The order establishes ICE-free zones. That means that city property and unwilling private businesses will no longer serve as staging grounds for these raids.
As Chicago seeks to thwart ICE's deportation efforts, Johnson and the Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, filed a lawsuit on Monday attempting to block the Trump administration from deploying National Guard troops to Illinois. During his remarks, Johnson made the absurd accusation that the extreme right has refused to accept the results of the Civil War. That was, of course, when slavery was abolished. He added, quote, "They have repeatedly called for a rematch, but in the coming weeks, we will use this opportunity to build greater resistance. Chicagoans are clear that militarizing our troops in our city as justification to further escalate a war in Chicago will not be tolerated. The right wing in this country wants a rematch of the Civil War," end quote. That's what Johnson said during his press conference. And he said Chicago would, quote, "not tolerate ICE agents violating our residents' constitutional rights," end quote, or the Trump administration's disregard for local authority. Of course, the issue is, how do illegal aliens and gangbangers and international drug cartels have any constitutional rights at all? I wonder if Johnson has even considered that. Johnson has directed Chicago agencies and departments to identify spaces within the next 5 days that have been targeted during ICE raids and to post a clear message to federal immigration officers that the city-owned property would not be used for immigration enforcement, including as a staging area, processing location, or operations base. Quote, "If the federal government violates this executive order, we will take them to court," end quote. That's what Johnson said, urging President Trump to leave Chicago the blank alone, end quote. Pritzker, long considered a potential 2028 presidential candidate, said on Sunday that he refused to comply with the Trump administration's ultimatum to deploy Illinois National Guard troops, calling it, quote, "absolutely outrageous and un-American. We must now start calling this what it is, Trump's invasion," end quote. That's what the governor said. Here's how President Trump's deputy chief of staff, Stephen Miller, responded to the Chicago mayor's new policy. Watch this.
I was asked the question of, well, do you have any example that this behavior hasn't been condemned by Democrat officials? Well, I can go one better. The mayor of Chicago not only has failed to condemn the violent obstructive acts against ICE and law enforcement, but in the aftermath of 2 coordinated attempted murders of ICE officers through vehicle ramming attacks, he issued a no-go zone for ICE officers. What do we think would happen if, say, under a Democrat administration, Republican officials declared no-go zones for the FBI? What do you think the reaction to that would be? How many people do you think would be arrested and placed into jail over that? And so it's just important to understand these are not isolated incidents. If you can't see, then you don't want to see. In other words, if you can't see that since we've taken office, there has been a organized, systematized campaign to delegitimize, dehumanize, threaten, impede, obstruct, and physically assault ICE officers in their conduct of their duties, then I can't persuade you of it because you're choosing not to see what's right in front of your face.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview. The UN's Food and Agricultural Organization highlights in a new report that high food prices continue to persist worldwide, citing data that shows a fivefold increase across many countries. This exponential increase makes conditions ripe for social unrest, particularly in developing or politically fragile countries. Bloomberg analyzed the data that highlighted adverse weather conditions in many of the world's top farm belts are resulting in declining harvest yields. Geopolitical tensions drove up diesel and gasoline prices, and that exerted a broader inflationary impact on production cost. The global phenomenon of excessive money printing, well, that has also been the driver of inflation. The report indicates that 50% of countries in North America and Europe experienced abnormally high food prices in 2023 when compared to the average between 2015 and 2019. And it's only gotten worse in 2024 and this year, 2025. The report suggests that when food inflation outpaces income growth, that begins the countdown clock of when social instabilities emerge. President Trump on Sunday said he would bomb Iran again if the country restarts its nuclear program, warning that the U.S. was, quote, not going to wait so long this time, end quote. A threat that comes amid growing signs that another U.S.-Israeli war against Iran may be coming. Quote, the B-2s, what they did, those beautiful flying wings, what they did, they hit every single target. And just in case, we shot 30 Tomahawks out of a submarine, end quote. That's what President Trump said in a speech at the Naval Station base there in Norfolk, Virginia. That was during a celebration of the U.S. Navy's 250th birthday. He was, of course, referring to the U.S. bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities on June of, 2022, this year. Quote, they were going to have a nuclear weapon within a month, end quote. That's what President Trump told a crowd of U.S. Navy sailors. And then he added, quote, and now they can start the operation all over again. But I hope they don't, because we'll have to take care of that too if they do. I let them know that. You want to do that? It's fine, but we're going to take care of that, and we're not going to wait so long, end quote. President Trump went on to say that he had B-2 pilots visit him in the Oval Office, who said the U.S. had been working on plans to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities for 22 years, but that no president before him wanted to do it. The president has previously acknowledged that he bombed Iran on behalf of Israel. He said in an interview with the Daily Caller that was published on September 1st, quote, look, nobody has done more for Israel than I have, including the recent attacks with Iran, wiping that thing out, end quote. Since the ceasefire ended the 12-day U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, Trump, he has threatened to bomb Iran again. He's threatened it several times. At the same time, the Trump administration is demanding that Iran enter negotiations to give up its nuclear enrichment program and place limits on its ballistic missiles. Those are demands that the Iranian officials have flatly rejected. So, given the two sides are digging in their heels, it appears, at least right now, that the U.S. will be going to war before all is said and done when it comes to Iran. Representative of Louisiana, Senator John Kennedy, said on Fox Business on Monday that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer will ultimately be forced to engineer an off-ramp to end the ongoing government shutdown. The government shutdown continues after Schumer led most Democrats in voting down the Republicans' spending bill. That was early on Wednesday morning. Appearing on Fox, Kennedy said the shutdown has little to do with policy disputes and everything to do with Schumer's political standing with his caucus. Watch this.
Trump could do likewise, but it's not personal for me, but I don't like almost anything that Chuck Schumer is doing. I don't like it. I mean, it's a direct contrast. He wants to move the country in the wrong direction.
I don't hate anybody.
Neither do I.
And I know you don't. And when I say my prayers, I ask God, don't let me hate. I don't hate Chuck. Senator Schumer, I know him well. this shutdown's not about policy. It's about politics. And Senator Schumer, this is what's going on. He is trying to get the loon wing, the socialist wing of the Democratic Party, which is in control, to love him. And they will never love him. They won't. He'd be better off doing what he did back in March, and just calling it like he saw it and keeping government open. Because what he's saying, we're going to keep government shut down until you, the Republicans, and President Trump give the Democrats $1.5 trillion, and they're going to tell us how to spend it.
We just had John Thune on, Majority Leader of the Senate, who said we can't do that.
And we're not going to do that.
You cannot do that.
We're not going to. I mean,
and Schumer has to know that.
And he does know that.
Yeah.
And let me tell you how this will end. It will end eventually when Senator Schumer goes to 6 or 8 of his members and the Democrats and says, do me a favor, vote to open it back up. I may have to criticize you. I'm not going to vote with you, but I need a way out of this. I need an offering.
That's the offering.
And that's what's going to happen. But he's got to be careful, because if it looks contrived, he's blown it. And he can't look like he's having a mutiny.
Well, now it is time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. President Trump said on Monday he has, quote, sort of made a decision, end quote, on sending long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine for use against Russia. Tomahawks can strike targets deep inside Russia, including Moscow. President Trump was asked about it by a reporter, and here's his response.
Made a decision on whether to supply Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine or sell them to NATO and let them sell them to Ukraine.
Yeah, I've sort of made a decision, pretty much, if you consider. Yeah, I think I want to find out what they're doing with them.
Yes.
You know, where are they sending them, I guess. I'd have to ask that question.
Trump's answer suggests that he will allow Zelensky's government, which is losing the war badly, to use the U.S.-made cruise missiles to be fired at Russian energy infrastructure and against its military-industrial factories, but not against the Kremlin or other government sites frequented by, well, Russia's top leaders. So we have another major escalation. Another new weapon system will be delivered to Ukraine. Because what Zelensky wants, Zelensky eventually seems to get, right? There is a pattern here. And each new weapons transfer, well, it seems to be more lethal and more powerful than the one before. Russian President Putin, he said just last week he did not think President Trump would approve of Zelensky's request for Tomahawk missiles for use against his country. Putin indicated that if Trump were to grant the request, it would be the final nail in the coffin of U.S.-Russian relations. Well, now we see that this decision has pretty much been made. The neocons, they appear to win again. There are simply just too many of them around the president, and they have his ear. And this is why we've been predicting here for a very long time that Americans will get drawn into a war. In fact, we already are. And unless there's a dramatic shift in strategy, well, it's just a matter of time before we see boots on the ground there in full-fledged combat with Russian soldiers. I pray that day never comes. President Trump has said he is disappointed with Putin because he's not making peace. And he has at least twice in recent days described Russia as a paper tiger for failing to quickly defeat Ukraine. But last week, Putin hit back, questioning if NATO was not the paper tiger for failing to stop Russia's advance. So it sounds like two schoolyard bullies are about to square off, does it not? And clearly neither one is ready to back down. And that's a loss for the world. Because each has weapons that are capable of wiping out scores and scores of people. Almost no Americans and no Russians want to go to war with each other. At least not anyone with their sanity intact. But apparently we have leaders that do want war. At least they're willing to risk it. And for what? Is Ukraine really worth risking our entire national existence? I don't think so. And all President Trump has to do is to view this problem through the lens of his own slogan, America First. America First. Where is our national interest in this whole issue? That's something to think about. Well, that does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. As always, thank you for tuning in. and for supporting the program so we can keep pushing it out free of charge. You can do that by supporting our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You'll find our mailing address on the website if you prefer to support us through the mail. Don't forget, our foundation also sponsors our Sunday night church service where I'm teaching through the book of Revelation, verse by verse. I'm in Revelation chapter 21. I'm a few verses in. Revelation only has 22 chapters, so we're almost done. And they're all available for you to watch free of charge as a ministry of our foundation and our network. You can find all 48 lessons that are there right now with more to come at lastdaysstudy.com. 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 Again, brought to you in part by our foundation. So thank you for your support right now. We need it now more than ever, folks, to keep pushing out all this free content. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. So next time, I'm Brandon House. May God save America. Take care. July 6, 2005. This is Tom Harper. Man figures plankton stopped his rare cancer. We got more of a response from this, from our viewers, than anything else you and I have ever discussed.
Tom Harper, 20 years ago, he had mesothelioma, deadly lung cancer, was given weeks to live, and he just intuitively started to eat the phytoplankton out of his fish tanks because he fed the phytoplankton to his shellfish. He was a shellfish farmer. And when he went in for the surgery, the surgeon came out of the operating room and told his family, I have not ever seen anything like it. The cancer is benign, and Tom Harper lived for years. He retired in Hawaii. We're not making any claim.
Here he is in his own words.
Started on a daily routine of just taking a bit of paste, putting it in my mouth, and wash it down with a drink of water. Within about 10 to 15 days, here I am, less pain in my back. I knew that something was going on, so I just kept eating half a teaspoon of this paste a day. I was booked to go for surgery in Victoria where they were going to do what they call a talc treatment. They went in there to have a look, saw something they'd never seen before, took 11 sites, sent them away for biopsy. I got the news back. Everything was benign. They just did not know what to make of it. Everything was absolutely clean. And I've tried dieting all my life because I'm a diabetic. If it's a coincidence or not, I don't know. My blood sugar started dropping. My weight started falling off. Here I am, no longer requiring insulin, and I was taking 88 units a day of insulin. I can eat just about what I want in moderation, and I have no elevated sugar levels, and I feel fabulous.
People, you hear the word cancer, and they want you to be instilled with fear. Cancer is nothing but a profound failure of the immune system. And what happened with Tom Harper is